Okay, so you know how some people, they try to get fancy at home? Oh, I'm going to make my own wine. Yeah, well, let's just say my attempt tasted a lot more like vinegar than a fine vintage. Turns out there's a whole art to this winemaking thing, and thankfully some people have actually, mastered it. So today we're taking a deep dive into the world of the Vineyard Cellar Master. Our guide for this little adventure is RoleCatcher.com. And no, it's not just for like job hunting, though they're great for that too. They've got these seriously cool career deep dives. So we're tapping into their expertise on Vineyard Cellar Masters think winemaking 101 meets your dream career, kinda. So when you picture a cellar master, you're probably thinking like, someone tucked away in some dusty cellar, right? But get this, it's not just about cobwebs and old bottles. According to RoleCatcher, these folks are practically like the conductors of the wine symphony. From grape to glass, they're running the show, making sure everything comes together. They're not just hanging out among the vines, though. They're knee-deep in quality control,
Sure.
figuring out if the fermentation process is doing its thing. Yeah. Even like keeping the cellar spotless. Seriously.
It's amazing, isn't it? That mix of scientific, well, precision, and then the hands-on artistry of it all. That's what gives us those incredible flavors we love. But it's not all like romance and sniffing fancy bouquets all day long. Rollcatcher's pretty upfront about that it's a demanding job, but rewarding, especially for those who thrive on a mix of meticulous planning and also being able to just problem solve creatively on the fly.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like 1 minute you're a scientist analyzing yeast cultures, and the next you're an artist blending different, what do they call it, varietals to get that perfect flavor. But there's also a surprising amount of like teamwork involved too, right? Yeah, because RoleCatcher mentioned that cellar masters work with everyone, the vineyard owners, the winemakers, even distributors and government regulators. It's a whole network of people behind that bottle of wine you see on the shelf.
Exactly. And it's not even just who they work with, it's how they work. Remember, these are the folks responsible for turning these like really delicate grapes into something that meets some seriously high standards, that takes serious organizational skills, attention to detail, and then just being able to juggle like a million things at once, kind of like conducting that wine symphony we were talking about.
Right, so you can't just like fall into this job.
Yeah.
What does RoleCatcher say about actually becoming a vineyard cellar master? Like, what's the path look like? They break it down in stages, kind of like climbing the ranks.
Yeah.
You might start as a vineyard cellar technician, getting your hands dirty, learning the ropes. Then maybe you move up to assistant cellar master, taking on more responsibility. And eventually you become the cellar master, even senior cellar master, leading a team, making the big decisions about the winemaking process. It's a real journey, like they say. So let's say you're like totally sold on this whole cellar master thing. What does it actually take to land a job in the field?
Well, it's not exactly like you need a degree in grape whispering, but education definitely plays a role.
Okay, so what, like viticulture? Isn't that about growing grapes?
Yeah, viticulture is a big one. That's all about the science of growing grapes. And then there's enology, which is like the science of winemaking itself. Those are, the obvious ones. But here's the thing. A business background can be surprisingly helpful too.
Hold on, really? I mean, what does business have to do with like barrels and fermentation?
More than you'd think, honestly. Remember, cellar masters aren't just artists. They've got to be managers too, right?
Yeah.
They're making decisions about budgets, negotiating prices with suppliers, maybe even marketing the final product.
Oh, so it's like running a whole operation.
Exactly. Especially with the smaller wineries, it's a lot like running a small business.
That actually makes a lot of sense. You can't just make great wine. You got to be able to like sell it too.
And then on top of the education part, there are certifications too. RoleCatcher mentions those quite a bit.
Oh, right, like becoming a sommelier.
Well, there's the Certified Specialist of Wine, the CSW. That one's huge. It's like having a sommelier give you their stamp of approval. Shows you really know your stuff about tasting and evaluating wine.
Okay, that's cool.
What else is there?
Then you've got the Certified Wine Educator, the CWE. That one's key if you want to share your knowledge with others, teach people about wine.
So you've got the education, you've got the certs. But what about like actual skills? Beyond just, loving wine.
Well, passion's a good starting point for sure. But RoleCatcher really digs into those like nitty-gritty skills that make a cellar master stand out. They talk a lot about critical thinking and problem solving.
Which makes sense, because what happens when something goes wrong with a batch of wine? Exactly. You got to think on your feet. Or imagine, like, a heat wave hits during harvest. You need a plan to keep those grapes safe,
Oh,
right?
for sure. You don't want all your hard work to go down the drain.
And then there's record keeping. That's another thing RoleCatcher really emphasizes.
Record keeping, really?
Absolutely. Everything a cellar master does, the fermentation temperatures, how long the wine ages, all of it has to be documented. Consistency and quality, that's the name of the game.
So you're not just a winemaker, you're like a historian, too.
In a way, yeah.
Okay, so let's say you've got the skills, the knowledge, the whole package. How do you convince someone to actually let you, loose in their cellar? Let's talk about nailing that interview, because I have a feeling it's pretty competitive out there.
Oh, for sure. And that's where RoleCatcher is super helpful. They've analyzed tons of interviews for these kinds of roles, and they've picked up on some key questions that tend to come up.
Oh, give me the inside scoop. What kind of questions are we talking about here? So, like, what kind of curveballs are we talking about here?
Well, they might grill you on your experience with different grape varietals. Like, could you tell a Cabernet Sauvignon grape from a Pinot Noir just by looking at it?
Oh, wow. I don't think I could.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think I know my wines, but the grapes themselves.
Right. It's next level stuff. Or they could ask you something like, how would you handle a sudden temperature spike in the cellar right in the middle of fermentation?
Oh, man, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. Exactly. It's all about showing them you can think on your feet, that you've got the knowledge and the problem-solving skills to handle whatever comes your way.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's be real. Some people are just like naturals at interviews. For the rest of us, is there anything in RoleCatcher that can help us, avoid a total meltdown?
Definitely. RoleCatcher doesn't just leave you hanging with a list of questions. They've actually got this whole AI thing going on that can give you a real advantage.
AI, like robots are going to help me get a job making wine.
Not exactly robots, but imagine this. You upload your resume, and their AI analyzes it, It figures out exactly what wineries are looking for in a cellar master and highlights all your most relevant skills and experience.
So it's like having a resume specifically tailored to a cellar master position.
Pretty much. Instead of sending out a generic resume, you're sending one that's like speaking directly to their needs.
Wow, that's pretty slick. Is that all the AI magic they've got?
Oh, there's more. They also have AI-powered interview practice.
Get out of here.
It's true. You can answer mock interview questions and get feedback on how you're doing, like your delivery, your answers, even your body language.
That's wild. It's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket. I could have used that back in the day. So, RoleCatcher's given us the inside scoop on this whole Vineyard Cellar Master thing, huh?
Yeah.
From the vineyard to the interview room, they've got you covered.
It's amazing what they've put together.
We've learned a ton today.
Yeah.
I never realized there was so much more to being a cellar master than meets the eye.
Definitely not just about sipping wine all day, that's for sure.
Speaking of which, here's a little something to ponder next time you're enjoying a glass of, say, Chardonnay or Cabernet. Could you actually train your palate to be as refined as a cellar master's, to pick out those subtle hints of like oak and vanilla, or maybe a touch of blackberry and spice?
It's something to think about, right? To really pay attention to all those aromas and flavors the next time you have a glass. It makes you appreciate the craft even more.
Totally. There's a whole world in every glass, isn't there? And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Vineyard Cellar Master. Cheers to always learning new things, chasing your passions, and maybe discovering a new favorite vintage along the way.